ahead. Just in case you hear that, call this meeting of the school building committee for the Dayton Elementary project through the Massachusetts School Building Authority to order. We could stand for the pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'd like to thank Kevin for doing a great job with our meeting minutes. I'll allow you a minute or so to look them over one last time, because I know that you looked at them scrupulously prior to today. And then, if so desired, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Mr. Chairman. So we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as amended with the address of 1111 Somerset Ave. Any discussion? Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. All right. Last meeting, we did have some discussion about trying to get into a regular cadence, try to get into a regular cadence with our meeting structure. Paul Reynolds had mentioned that on Mondays, this room is used at 6 p.m., but I'm not 100% sure if that was every Monday.
Every
Fourth
Monday.
Every fourth meeting. That's it. And I know that starting in September, you can't start any sooner than 5. So, to be honest, based on school committee, based on occasionally going to selectmen meetings and having selectmen on the committee, Mondays tend to work better. So, I would like to see us get into a regular cadence on Mondays, if at all possible. And I think we could start at 5, and if it's not the fourth Wednesday, if it's not the fourth Monday, then we could aim to be finished by 6, but I don't think we'd get kicked out at 6.
We also have the building next door that we can utilize. There'd be occasions where Paul would have to leave us. You too? What happens? It's DDIC after this, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so just maybe the possibility that Paul might have to scoop rather quickly at the end, but he's on that committee, but we can use the client that, so the same team setup and everything. So we need to explore a different option based on the town's schedule.
All right. I personally don't have a preference of which Monday.
Look at the town website too, because that might not be the only recurring Monday meeting.
Good point. I mean, in some respects, Eliza, I don't know how you feel about this, but rather than, have school committee second and fourth weeks and then have SBC the third week, I'd kind of rather have that third week off.
Yep.
Maybe that is the solution. Maybe we do the fourth Monday, but do it in the primetime building so that we're not concerned with bleeding over to, what did you say this? DDIC?
GDIC.
DDIC.
Development Convention.
We already know the town meeting schedule for the fourth Monday, which is DDIC.
That looks like the only recurring Monday is.
So,
Council on Aging does have bingo on Mondays from 1 to 2.
So I propose that starting with August the 26th, that we meet the fourth Monday of the month. And I suggest it be the primetime building so that we don't have to be concerned about bleeding over to DDIC. But,
What was the start time?
5 o'clock.
I'll just confirm that too with Leanne, and she'll have the whole schedule of what's happening there too, just so we know. But back tomorrow, just shoot an email that you could just that was great.
Thank you. And I can also do, once Kevin gets us a rock solid commitment to that, I can send calendar invitations the same way that I've been sending the calendar invitations for the first 2 meetings. I'll end up setting it up in such a way where it's a recurring meeting.
So the meetings are gonna be in this rear building.
The line.
Fourth.
Won't necessarily think we need to entertain a motion for that. Yeah, consensus. All right, so next thing that we have on the agenda is to discuss the educational profile questionnaire, the EPQ. So I just wanted to give the committee an update on my conversation with the MSBA, which was last Monday. There were a couple of questions that I had about the enrollment data that they are requesting, and that's the next item on the agenda. And I also wanted to get some clarity because I didn't see anything that required the school committee to vote on the EPQ or even to have the SBC vote on the EPQ. So I set up a Zoom call with Robin McElhaney, who is our contact at the MSBA. And she was very helpful with the enrollment information, which again is the next thing on the agenda. And she said that we don't need school committee approval on the EPQ. She said some towns/districts do get the SBC to approve the EPQ, and others just, get kind of a consensus on it. What I had said to her is that I feel like all of you are investing your time in this, and that as often as we can at least put it out there for discussion and have a motion, I think it adds credibility to the process, especially for our residents that are maybe watching some of these some of these meetings on tape delay. So she said it's actually good practice, and she certainly supported that. So what I'd like to do, because I know a couple of people mentioned that they had some difficulty accessing the EPQ online. You do have a copy of the EPQ in your packet. So I'd like for you to take a couple of minutes just to refresh your memory with it. I want to thank Caitlin for her assistance in helping me put it together. I want to thank Eliza for catching something on the very first page about Dayton Elementary being pre-K to 5 and Palmer River being pre-K to 5. We're fixing those to be pre-K to 4 before we submit on July the 30th. But take a couple minutes just to refresh your memory with it, and then we'll start to take your feedback. Take about 2 more minutes. I think the most efficient way to do this would be to take it section by section. Caitlin and I will do the best we can to answer questions, but we're also open to feedback in terms of massaging the wording, beefing something up, again, we really would like for everybody to feel like they had input and buy-in on the final product that we're going to submit by the 30th. So as far as section 1, as I've already mentioned, Eliza pointed out that this particular version has pre-K through 5 and K through 5 on the second column. So we will adjust those to reflect pre-K through 4.
I think that first column too, I don't know, but we didn't have pre-K. We didn't have, I don't know that we even had K back, if it's the original design of the school and the grade configuration going way back. We didn't have pre-K and we didn't have kindergarten either. But I don't recall, like, was it 1 to 4 originally? That I
It
don't
was
know.
1 through 5 originally.
Was it?
Yeah.
I didn't know
I went there.
that. Okay.
Nice.
So grades originally in column 1 for Dayton Elementary should read 1 through 5. I'll do some checking in terms of trying to get some answers as far as Palm River. In the second column, we know that it needs to reflect pre-K through 4 for both of those boxes. I did ask Robin about the year founded column. We know Dayton Middle School was not founded in 1993. So what she suggested was to put an asterisk there and then put the statement below, which indicates that it was founded in the 50s, but 1993 represented a rebuild from a significant fire.
That's kind of a misleading question, like they're talking about the establishment of the building.
Yeah. There are aspects of this that are counterintuitive, especially in the education brain.
And was 6 to 8.
All right, section 2 is largely a cut and paste from the statement of interest that we submitted back in April of 2023. One of the things that I will draw your attention to is the mention, it's almost dead center. Furthermore, the current configuration of our parking lots poses a safety issue to students and parents during the morning after the drop off, the one-way in and out roadway, staff standing in the road to direct parents, so on and so forth. So as I mentioned to you in the last meeting, my initial submission of the statement of interest was to try to make it a campus assessment. And they came back to me pretty quickly and said, you got to pick one building or the other. So we picked the elementary school, but in the statement of interest, I did try to make references to the issues that we have on the campus itself.
Question. In section 2, it says proposed new school will be designed to accommodate 500 students. Yet when I look at the projected enrollment for 2028, 2029, you sum up pre-K through 4, that's 526 students. And I had 2029, 2030, come up with some columns, 523. I wasn't able to go through the other columns, but is that going to be a significant disconnect or?
That needs to be adjusted, for sure.
So where would it be adjusted in the second section here? Okay.
So change that 500 to reflect the we provided.
So I'm going to make the assumption that we would look at the.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but they will ultimately tell us how big they're willing to build.
Okay, so that, I mean, this is still a fluid situation, so we're not locked into 500, and this would not become a disconnect.
Well, we're going to change the 500
Okay,
before we
okay,
submit to match the maximum on the enrollment
Okay,
projections.
terrific, thank you.
But, as they do their own study, which is the next portion of the agenda, that I'll share some of the building permit information. I'll get you in a second one. The number of births and the building permits and all those types of things. They're gonna come back to us as a committee and they're gonna say, we think it should be 515 instead of 520 or something like that. So there'll be some horse trading that takes place.
I just didn't want this to be an issue. I didn't
No,
realize
it's a
we were
great
so
catch.
very flexible.
Okay,
great.
Lenny.
Last meeting, we talked about K-5. Based on the way this discussion is going, I had to assume that it's off the table.
No, but it's not something that I feel is advisable to put into this submission. Because they made it clear that they wanted us to pick one building or the other. And the building that we picked is a pre-K through 4 building. Now, I was telling Mr. Perry before we got started that I was at the MASS conference last week, which is the superintendent's statewide conference. And as I was kind of working the vendor's room, the OPM that we had in Attleboro was there, like the actual person who was on the Attleboro project was there representing Skanska. And 2 of the 3 lead architects were there, as well as the building company. And so I did, kind of feel them out from the standpoint of, where's the negotiation piece in terms of where does that occur? And they said that comes in feasibility. So once we get into feasibility, then we as a committee certainly can suggest them looking at making it a pre-K through 5 building. I also had a conversation with an architect 2 years ago who walked that property with me and loved the green space in between the 2 buildings and actually suggested the possibility of merging them into one pre-K through 8 building. So there's going to be ample time to have those discussions, but it's not in this particular process.
See, one of my concerns, knowing that we currently have a fire department feasibility study going on. We have people in the background calling out for a new DPW building, is that we could end up getting pitted, like the library was for many years, with another major project that could compromise what we're trying to do, or create a bigger problem down the road at the middle school or even at the high school level, which the high school is quite old too.
Timing wise, there's not much that we can control in terms of how these dominoes fall, because the feasibility vote has to be before, I think it's January 20th of 2025. That's the 275th day of the process. And, then once we start, and I'm thinking positively here, once we start feasibility, there are going to be milestone dates that they expect us to move forward in terms of votes and things like that. I mean, if there is any flexibility for us to be able to not pit ourselves against another project, then I think that's good fodder for discussion by this group. And obviously, we're going to keep the selectmen informed along the way. But I don't know to the extent that we're going to be able to completely control that.
I have 2 maybe things that we could maybe massage the language,
Sure.
but I'd want to run it by you, what you think.
Absolutely.
I like how you brought the safety concern of the parking lot.
Yep.
And I know they kind of came back and said, pick either the campus or pick the school, we got to pick one, but there's a lot of safety concerns in the school. Can we just bring some of those in, like the ceiling tiles or the bowing floors? Like this project would create a safer environment for the students inside the building?
We can. I mean, that was all covered in the statement of interest.
Right.
And we also covered it on the site visit, but
Okay,
Caitlin, if you, I know Kevin's taking minutes, but if, since you and I are gonna have to narrow this down, but.
I'm making a list.
I think it would be beneficial to keep, bring that point home.
Sure.
Again, safety issues inside and outside, I agree with that.
Yeah, because I mean, this is a document that, you know, the selectmen are gonna look at, the school committee's gonna look at, the community's gonna look at, so by all means.
thank you. And my last point was, it says the proposed new school will be designed, but I know we talked, it could be a renovation too. So just to make it clear for the public or whoever, could we change that to say something along the lines of the feasibility study should explore, and then to go on instead of the proposed new school? Because it could be a new school, it could be a renovation, but that way we're not boxing us.
Yeah, like the feasibility study will focus on accommodating.
Right,
All those things about, safety.
Right.
Security, and educational environment. That's a good point.
that's all I have. Thank you.
I just want to raise, I can't find where it is, but I saw the reference having lead in the pipes, so it should be redone. Maybe within that sort of section might be the place to raise, other,
I didn't hear the first part of it, somebody was saying.
I can't find it, but there's a
Yeah.
place in here that talks about the kitchen being renovated to
Mhm.
take out the lead, high lead content in the water.
It's on page 7.
Yeah,
At the top.
so it's, but that might be a good place to add a sentence in there about other health and safety issues such as asbestos tiles and that stuff.
Yep, sounds good.
I think, back to Mark's point, I think if it's addressed generically in the section 2, and then more specifically, specific issues in the next sections. I really feel it's important to keep that front and center also.
I agree.
So we're going to change the 500 students to a number that reflects the enrollment projections from NESDEC, which is a little 2-page packet that you have. The section near the end that starts with the proposed new school, we're going to revise that to say the feasibility study will focus on designing or a design that accommodates 500 blank students. And we're going to make more explicit references to safety.
Well said.
So can I just ask one question, sort of in line with all of this? And you answered it partially when you said that might come during the feasibility study. We can tweak things certainly then. My question is, what's the purpose of this questionnaire, along the way? So that what is in here as I'm reading this and I'm looking at room types and things we want to include, how etched in stone, I'll phrase it that way, is this? Not, right? Okay, I just want to understand.
It's a great question because this is why part of this is counterintuitive to me.
Yeah.
Because, and when we get to the section that has the proposed room types,
Mhm.
I basically just tried to, ramp up, like if we have 5 spaces for grade 1 now, I put 6 spaces.
Mhm.
It's kind of a wish list. And I'll give you a for instance. So when we built the new building in Attleboro, we had to do some horse trading in terms of the enrollment because, they were showing by their formulaic approach, they said, we think it should be built for 1,700 students. We argued that with some potential developments that were going to happen with, dilapidated buildings downtown being converted into apartments, that it should be, I was going to say 1,800. So they eventually acquiesced to what it was that we wanted. And so then the next layer of it was the number of classrooms. And so we started to divide, based on like the teacher's CBA for like classroom maximums. And we were like, there are more classrooms here than what we thought it was going to be. And they were working off of 24 students per room. Well, in a high school, 24 students per room is a luxury. And so we were able to show to them that we were paying overages to teachers who were teaching anything above 28 in a class. So that was they modified the proposed square footage based on the number of classrooms, and that saved us some money. So what's kind of counterintuitive to me is that we haven't even been through feasibility. We don't know if, bringing the 5th grade back makes sense. We don't know if, a renovation makes more sense than a new construction. And they're asking us to complete a wish list. But to answer your question, nobody's going to wave this in our face and say, no way, you're not going to have, you're not going to have 2 STEM rooms because you only asked for 1 STEM room and we're in the first.
No, when I was reading through it, I saw it as you are, again, coming from that educational background, like, okay, you're asking us to predict some things here that we can't, we still have to do the feasibility study. Yes, it did seem somewhat.
I'll say the feasibility process too goes to a very comprehensive educational programming process.
Okay.
Extreme.
It's like this on steroids.
Yeah, it's like
this on steroids.
yeah, it's extremely part of the funding is to go hire a professional team to come in and go through they'll talk to you, they'll talk to teachers, they'll talk to us, what our future programming will look like. What does require breakout rooms, does require smaller spaces in the classrooms to do smaller group instruction, and it goes very deep.
Thank you, because that was one of my questions, looking at the teaching methodologies and so forth. Who had input into this? We're kind of making some bold statements there about what we want to do, but.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that process.
That answers my question.
Is part of the input to that process, the feasibility study, does it consider projects or developments, housing developments that are currently sitting on, for instance, the building inspector's desk?
So that's, to Bill's point, they had to identify, and we did as well in my town. We have one of those state hospitals that we were in the process of selling. The first time around, ours failed, in Medfield, where I was on the committee. They were not taking that into consideration, and there's 300 units going in there, which will ultimately bring students. This time around, because we're back at it again, it is being taken into consideration. So, and maybe Bill has more experience to what you're saying, is what that division is, that they say there is some sort of guideline that says what's approved for construction versus what's in the works.
Yeah, and I'll share that information when we get to the next portion of the agenda. Lenny, you had a question?
It's not a question. In regards to development in Dayton, one thing please keep in mind, there is currently a moratorium because of the water issues in this town. Once those water issues are resolved, things open up big time. And there is a plan that the water district does have. The developers haven't, because the market is high, taken advantage of. In the Dayton Water District, the agreement is they can build if they put in wells with the agreement that once the moratorium ends, they will have to tie into Dayton Water. So if this market changes, interest rates come down, you may see more people doing it. I know one developer, he attends monthly water district meetings, wondering when. So there are people watching it closely in Dayton.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, section 4, which again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but section 4 on community engagement is kind of a catch-all section. So Caitlin, if you could make a note on your hard copy for somewhere in page 9, that we we consult with Lenny, maybe we can even, the three of us could even caucus a little bit, like when this meeting's over, we can get some suggested terminology to put it in there.
Okay.
Just to, Leo brought up the ed plan, so I pulled up my ed plan from Attleboro, 77 pages. So,
Wow.
so you go from a little over 7 to 77 in terms of once the ed plan has to be written, so. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on the table that starts at the bottom of page 2 and carries over to pages 3 and 4? Caitlin and outgoing principal worked with me in terms of just populating this in terms of what we currently have.
I don't have a question, but I think it would be nice for us to know, just moving forward, so we have it in our notes, what the enrollment is per classroom.
Per class.
Like just in the comments for even just for ourselves,
The class size.
the class sizes would be just nice information to know as we're planning moving forward.
Students per
Per,
classroom.
right,
Okay.
like, how many kids do we have, in special ed, how many kids are enrolled in?
Is your schedule done to that extent, Caitlin? It is, okay.
Mhm.
All right. Good answer. Yep,
Lot up and running.
that's definitely something.
Lot up and running.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so moving to page 4, sections B and C describe how core spaces, specialty spaces, non-traditional spaces described are currently used. And then also using the space below, provide information about the current teaching methodology, include class size policies if applicable. One of the things that we wanted to make a concerted effort to emphasize was the cafeteria basically becoming a catch-all space. We don't have the ability to have a full performing arts program. The teacher's lounge is subpar at best. Chief McGee is consistently reminding Damien and will be consistently reminding Leo in his new role about how we're using that stage for storage. The gymnasium no longer has the capacity to seat the entire student body, which is difficult for us from a programming standpoint if we want to bring in a great guest speaker. Or last year we had a national teacher award. We couldn't even get the entire school student body in there at one time to celebrate that award, so.
Here too would be another good piece to emphasize the safety concerns about utilization of the area for storage and fire safety.
Perhaps a note from the fire chief.
I think, what is it now, one classroom, one lunch per a grade at a time?
Yeah, that's all we can fit in there.
You're running your lunches from early to late, right?
10:40 to 1:30.
Which I think is a concern as well for students. I mean,
Yeah.
by the time kindergarten gets out, they're already starving because they had lunch at 10 o'clock in the morning. Right? They've had a snack at 2, but.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm just gonna make the comment because I have to, like, special education pull-out sessions in the cafeteria is like,
Yeah, that's
Well, that's,
I think emphasizing the special education. also.
right, because I mean, like, you think the exact, like, that's such a distracting space.
in the,
Yep.
all this documentation. Is there a call for or what I'm looking for? Ability for the fire chief to specific as the fire chief or, the police chief or the water. But I'm thinking what we have here in that paragraph specifically, the fire chief to say as per Dr. Fire Chief, boom.
I mean, I think there's a level of trust from the MSBA that when the school department is, saying this, that it's gonna come out in the wash once we start getting into feasibility anyway.
Yeah, you're gonna have to break out sections with
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
specific entities
Okay.
to clearly define it.
And these are great questions. This is more just an accounting of kind of where we are and where we'd like to be. It's not really, we're not trying to make a compelling case because they've
Okay.
already granted us the access. So now it's, we've got our foot in the door. They want a more updated status report than what we provided back in April of 2023.
Okay, thank you.
I just had one, I'm looking for it, section 3, I wrote in my notes, C, where we talked about, am I ahead? Am I somewhere else?
What, I didn't hear you, so where are you?
Section 3.
Yes, you are ahead.
I'm ahead. Okay, I'll wait.
That being said, at the top of page 5, I think one of the things, it's the first full paragraph, it's not the first paragraph, but it's the first full paragraph. I was so impressed at the last school committee meeting of the school year. We had one more meeting after school had dismissed, but it was a June school committee meeting. And one of the things that my administrative team has tried to make a priority is showcasing our schools. So throughout the year, we have a high school showcase where they come to the school committee and for 20 minutes or so, they celebrate or they talk about the great things that are going on at the high school. Then we did a separate one for the CTE program. And then we did Beckwith, Palmer River, Dayton Elementary, Dayton Middle. Dayton Elementary ended up being the last one. And I was so incredibly impressed with the level of technology that's being integrated into our pre-K through 4 classrooms in that building. And it actually reinforced a decision that I had with my assistant superintendent and with Leo when Leo was the director of IT, that we could scale back on some of the middle school computer essentials because those computer essentials were already being utilized in a lot of our, second, third, and fourth grade classrooms. But the project-based learning piece is something that when we were building a new high school in Attleboro was something that we did a lot of emphasis on, and now it's actually trickling down to elementary students. And so that's why as we go through the table that's at the bottom of 5 and carries over to 6, you're going to see, STEM spaces, a maker space, because the project-based learning, the collaboration, the student voice that takes place in those types of environments is hugely important. Just wanted to mention that before we move on to section 3. As I mentioned, I was asked the question before, in the table at the bottom of page 5 and at the top of page 6, I just kind of went with what I felt was a more robust version of what we have. So if we had 5 classrooms for grade 1, I'd put 6 classrooms for grade 1. I ramped up the special education spaces so that we could have not only the 2 separate rooms that we currently have, but also a dedicated sensory space, a dedicated OT PT space. Under art, I took us from one basically visual art room to not only a visual art room, but also a STEAM room. And that's not like a sauna, STEAM room. Science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. But then as far as the other, at the very bottom of that table that's on page 6, a project-based learning makerspace. Instead of an old school computer lab, the shift is now, the devices can go into a cart and the cart can roll anywhere. We want a space that's got 3D printers. We want a space that's got, engineering tools and manipulatives that, these kids can actually get their hands dirty in designing stuff and then be able to print it out on a 3D printer.
Wow.
Caitlin, one change that we need to make on page 6, and I just noticed it. I changed it on the first table, but didn't change it on the second table. For dining and food service, we really should have a 2 there because we want to be able to have, you know, a full service kitchen / serving area.
Is there any space attached to this building, or is that the middle school for, like grounds and maintenance? Like, yeah, well, that's what I mean, is for the campus, what's happening?
That's it, just a little garage right up front, storage container.
Should we add something?
That's a
No
good point.
storage down there.
Yeah, this would be at least, you know, a
Right.
workshop space where like you're keeping
Really in it.
essential tools.
It's an ongoing friendship with the fire department about our storage there. Yeah. And I've only been here 6 months.
Even like you said, records, you guys must have record retention too, and a need for place your files and storage for that,
Much of
right?
that digital, and then student files get passed on to the next school, and then we retain those in the regional.
So that's not so much an issue, it's more just the maintenance, having a maintenance space, yeah.
So what do you?
Great point, you need that.
Yeah, just
They
saying
drop it off a lot of
gasoline.
places. I mean, they do small things, oil changes and stuff like that. but,
And I think this gives me the opportunity to mention something because, you know, one would think that on the pre-populated tables that the MSBA gives you, you would have something like that on there. And Kevin's question kind of triggered a memory that I had from Attleboro. The MSBA is only in the business of reimbursing you for spaces that directly impact students. And so even like, we wanted to build a maintenance shed so that we could, you know, pull in the truck and we could pull in the tractors. We had a gator for like the fields and things like that. And we were able to build it, but we got zero reimbursement for it. So those things will come up in feasibility. There's a reason why they don't put it on the table, because they don't want you to think that they're going to reimburse you for it.
Which is fine. I just think it's something overall from a town perspective is we want you to be able, I mean, you could make a compelling argument that having an effective maintenance program does enrich the lives of our kids, but that's, you know, but I get what you're saying. They're not going to see it that way, but I think just being mindful of the whole project, even if it can't be reimbursed, that we need to have that consideration.
That's not to say that there isn't efficiencies by building it in and paying for yourself, because they're there, they're building the building and
Oh, definitely.
Right.
a big space out of it, right?
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question about the number of classrooms and stuff? So there's an existing number and sort of a sense as to how adequate that number of space that we have. And then there's this somewhat guesstimate as to how much the town is gonna grow. So you've increased it sort of from 5 to 6. How much is there circling back on that number to make sure that it's not 5 to 7, say, for example?
Yeah, so when I walk everybody through the enrollment portal that we also have to have submitted by July 30th, you know, I'll kind of talk about that a little bit, but you know, it's like I mentioned before in terms of my Attleboro example, they did their computations based on population, the number of births, the number of building permits, and, you know, potential housing projects, and they came back with 1,700, and we said, we don't think you're right. We think we're going to end up with, you know, 1,800, and we were able to show them some documentation that supported that, and so that's why I'm not stressing too much over, whether any of these should be a 6 or be a 7,
Yeah, I just,
because there's time for that to come out. Which, again, speaks to why I think some of this is counterintuitive, because it's like, want us to have a dream school and we haven't even gotten to the point where we've entered into feasibility with a project manager or an architect.
Right, and I would think some of those things might come up, as we go on. Oh, what about a room for a speech pathologist? What about?
I will say from my experience, while this document isn't like set in stone,
Mhm.
have had it held against you in questioning. Often we had certain ones that we lowballed, and then things changed, and then they came back and they're like, well, we did only ask for 2, like, they wanted more documentation, more information about why we upped the
Mhm.
numbers for certain things, so in terms of it's a negotiation, it's kind of how I see it, and I would rather expand the numbers a little bit rather than just
Mhm.
do a small bump, because if they do come back, you don't want to have to fight additionally more for some of these items.
Was that the EPQ or was that the ed plan?
This is key.
Okay.
And then, we had stuff for the feasibility to bump it up, but then those are the hard questions when they come back and you're like,
Yeah, why did you
why
change
did you
it?
change it?
Yeah, change it all to, just give 10 of everything.
I don't want to do that either, because then you're just posture.
So when you guys go back, think about, yeah, little ones that you might not.
Maybe we should like up these now,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'd go to 7.
to have flexibility.
Yeah.
Can we take the numbers out of order and talk about them, and maybe that will help us, give us some context for the number of rooms?
I don't know what you mean by take them out of order.
Well, I know we were gonna wait till the end to talk about the enrollment projections. Could we look at that maybe now instead and then look at? the
Yeah, I mean,
number of rooms?
that's actually what I was kind of doing a little bit of computation, so there's an aspect of the EPQ where we talk about the teacher's contract says that it's worded very strangely, in my opinion, that should be an average of 23 to 26. An average is a number. I don't know why it's an average is a range, but anyway, so, I have to give Eliza credit as a school committee member who's always advocating for lower class sizes. And I said this in the budget process back in March, that we are starting to become perilously close to where I'm concerned about our class sizes, especially at the elementary level.
Mhm.
If we went with 23 per class at 6 rooms, it's 138 kids that you could accommodate per grade. And to Mark's point, if you take this chart that I gave you, it's got it's got page 4 on the bottom of it.
Mhm.
If you look at the top enrollment projections, you're gonna see numbers that are like 90, 87, 114. We don't get anything that's above 121. And that's 2027 grade 6. That being said, I have no problem, based on your experience in Brockton, I have no problem beefing this up a little bit. But I also don't want to, make it seem like we were just kind of like.
Throwing a number up.
But does this have like some of the proposed developments, like maybe like the Forest Hills or the Strawberry?
Arborcrest.
Arborcrest,
Well,
like
it gets
those
back to
types of
that
things.
issue of,
Well,
what's
this
on
was
the
done
table.
this was done in December of 23, and we paid NASDAQ a pretty good piece of change to do this. Let me just look very quickly, because I have a little bit more of a version.
Yeah,
Mark, they don't specify, they don't specify that they looked at
Is that the study,
specific new
the
development.
2019 study?
No, this is the 2023, this is the December 2023 enrollment projection.
There's a little,
I'm going back to the one that we did many years ago, and they projected out a number of years. And in that one, that was a more comprehensive study they did for us, for the school committee and the district. And they did talk to selectmen, and they did all of that. So I'm sure they would have gotten some of those, but that was back in 2019, I think.
And that's in the folder.
Yes,
That I shared with
yes.
everybody.
Now,
The resource.
2019, that was before Abercrest.
Well, he said 2023.
it says
No,
right,
he's talking about the one I'm
right
talking.
at the bottom, it says projections should be updated annually to reflect changes in and out migration of families, real estate sales, residential construction, because it could change. I mean, any one of these developments could happen like that, so you can,
Right.
all you want.
Abercrest.
Yeah.
That was a great example.
One of the,
It would stand to reason, again, not all of this is reasonable, but it would stand to reason that if the school committee had that study done in 2019, which again, as you said, is very comprehensive, and they talked about new developments at that point, that they would be figuring it in when they were doing enrollment projections in December of 2023. But if we want to put some cushion, I don't have a problem with that. I don't think that they're gonna laugh us out of those.
What was the number you came up with for, per grade?
138.
What's our current average,
I want to say the highest one is going to be going into fourth grade, and that's a little over 100.
So if you look at the top chart on page 4, and you look at 2023,
102.
Yep.
that gives you the number of births.
Okay.
That's not this current year. So current year is the very top. The kids that were born in 2018, 71 births. So we're projected to have 39 in pre-K.
Okay.
90, is that 3 or 98? 93,
Mhm.
82, 85, 105, 79.
Okay.
Which, 79 in grade 4 is it's close to half of what 23 times 6 is.
Yeah, that adds up. So that kind of shows that the 6 is probably adequate for,
I think the other thing that's extremely important about the MSBA's philosophy is flexibility of spaces. So, obviously, in many respects, a pre-K classroom is going to look different than a grade 4 classroom. But if you had a little bit of a bubble and you needed 7 grade 3 rooms one year, you probably would only need 5 grade 4 rooms that particular year. Caitlin has seen that kind of bubble that's happened the last couple of years. So, Lynn Desert, who's Caitlin's predecessor, she's had to do that in the time that I've been here the last 2 years. We had to take what was a second grade classroom and convert it to a third grade classroom based on the enrollment numbers that were in the building. So,
I know we talked about at the last meeting, potentially do a 1 through 5. I know we have 5 at 0 here, but if we moved it 1 through 4 and we did 7 for each, and maybe they agree with our numbers with the feasibility study and the projections and all that. I could see 2 benefits. One, if down the road when the project's complete, if we did 1 through 5, we'd have some flexibility. Or if an Abercrest or someone does come in and that wasn't reflected in here, we'd have the flexibility for 1 through 4. So I personally, just for flexibility, sometimes projects start small and they keep getting bigger and bigger. I'd rather start a little bigger and at least we can come down instead of keep going up,
Yeah.
So I'd like to see 7, that's just me.
Okay. Anybody finally opposed to 7?
Easier to give it away.
Right.
Yes.
Oh,
It's not in the plans.
No, not yet.
It's happening. It's happening. No, Abercrest.
Oh.
All right, so, moving on to, pages 7 and 8, that's kind of the conclusion of that section. This is where, we have a narrative about shifting the way that we're currently teaching in the elementary school to, ways that we would like to start teaching, which is emphasis on, STEM education, more project-based learning, even, an outdoor classroom space that teachers could sign up for and rotate, prioritizing special ed more than what it was prioritized back in the, the 50s or even in 90s when it was renovated. So I got to give Caitlin a lot of credit. One other factor in terms of Caitlin and I preparing the EPQ, we used templates from other districts. I reached out to my OPM from Attleboro, and she was able to get me a couple of elementary EPQs, and then the MSBA provided us with some samples as well. So while this is very good work on Caitlin's part, some of it's boilerplate too. So.
Can I just ask, this is the question I had earlier.
Yeah.
So under C, the third paragraph, and you mentioned this just a little while ago, talking about the project-based learning. I agree, that presentation was incredible at our school committee meeting. The language there says the school is also exploring the full-scale implementation of project-based learning. I'm just thinking of this as sort of that preliminary EPQ where you worked on it together. If I'm reading that and these become public documents, and the public is looking at this, or the teachers are looking at this, full-scale implementation almost sounds like this is where we're going, as opposed to what currently may be happening or not. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know.
So the wording.
Yeah, unless you disagree with me.
I mean,
We could add across grades pre-K to 4.
It's, I think that exploring the full-scale implementation piece, that almost makes it sound like I'm shifting from one methodology to exploring doing this throughout the school. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think we only used full scale because previously, because right now it's only on an individual basis
Yeah.
with teachers. We
Mhm.
can't do it, full scale throughout the school because we don't have the space or the resources. So we were thinking in terms of exploring it
Yeah.
full scale within the school, that all grades will be able to access it whenever they want to
They
access
can
it.
access it, yeah.
So we could definitely change.
Adding like access to implementation. Access.
Yeah.
Project-based learning.
What if you just take out, I get what everybody's point, that full scale implementation sounds like this big deal.
Yeah, yeah.
How about strike that out? Exploring school-wide.
School-wide access to project-based learning.
Yep.
Thanks.
And then the paragraph above that, it also says the school is proposing a team teaching approach, just from, again, a public view, explaining the team teaching approach maybe, or the difference between what's currently in place to a team teaching approach might be helpful, so that I think just saying team teaching, there's lots of different ways that people can approach team teaching, whether it's having a co-teach or a pod type situation.
Mhm.
Maybe just explaining that might be helpful as well.
Okay.
And maybe that.
Yep. We could add that.
okay, for section 4, on community engagement, we are going to leave in Lenny's suggestion about the the moratorium on water. And the three of us can maybe caucus afterwards so that we can get some suggested language. We are backfilling Leo's position as Director of IT. Once we have someone in that position, then we'd like to work up a shell of a project website to share with this group, get some feedback from you in terms of, and then we, like to be able to link it to the town website and like to be able to link it to the district website as well. I also provided them with some hyperlinks to, the initial SBC process that Mr. Mullen was working on before his departure. Taunton Gazette did a really nice article, and believe it or not, Rehoboth Reporter, even though they primarily cover Rehoboth stuff, they did give us a nice article back in January, I believe. And then I also linked the press release that we just worked on for SBC.
I'm gonna ask it.
We also add to this section to do focus groups, with public, teachers. I think even students would be helpful. If their opinions on that.
We can articulate that.
Bill, can I ask you a question? This town website, SBC process, or anyone else from the town as well? I remember watching a selectmen's meeting where Mike Mullen went through the entire process. Is that what, does anyone know if that's what this is? Because that was excellent. He went through the whole process and he included things like, 55% of the feasibility study is reimbursed by MSBA. He talked about the fact that that was socioeconomic factors factored into that, and it was done yearly. It was just a great presentation, and I think that would help townspeople if they missed that. It was, again, pretty comprehensive and some good information in that. I don't know if that's what this.
If it's not on there, we can have that YouTube linked back to the committee's.
Okay.
Great point.
And then as far as section 5 is concerned, there isn't really a whole lot that we have in terms of a coordinated program review. Lynn Zerk's been there for the better part of 7 years. In her tenure, there wasn't a CPR then. We don't really have a master plan or facilities plan. The NESDEC information is in your folders. I extrapolated a couple of pages for you and printed those out for you for today. But also the extensive report back from 2019 is in your folders as well.
To comment on that, Bill, when we earlier said some people have trouble accessing this document. I couldn't access it by your link, but when I went to the resources folder, it was there. It wasn't in either for you?
No, I couldn't work on that in here.
So as far as making these edits, would you like for us to put these edits in place and get a revised version to you? Maybe, what's today, Monday? Maybe by Wednesday, like 48 hours from now. We're not going to have time to meet again, but I think on the email thread, if you would reply all, which I know sometimes people hate reply all, but if you reply all and say, I still think that on page 7 in section 4A, we should talk a little bit more about safety.
You can't do that. That's a violation of open meeting. We would have to have one, like I could send you a comment.
Yeah, yeah, he's right.
Individually,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, that's great.
Yeah, he's right.
All right, so don't reply all. But
That's a new thing we like to do in Dayton when we send out an email, we're like, do not reply all.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
well, I'll send it via blind carbon copy, so even if somebody does hit reply all by mistake, it'll only go back to me anyway.
You have a small group, Bill, because it just
You
can't,
can.
be- it can't just be the majority.
That's right.
So you could have you and 2 other people
Mhm.
apply to them, that way the three of you are working on it in conjunction.
I mean, I think we can,
I think we do it.
because this document is not binding, I'm perfectly okay with just instilling good faith in,
I am too.
I was.
Yeah, I am too.
to not, let's not like bog
Bog
this
it
down
down.
on
I
something that's
agree.
not gonna crush us moving forward. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion for us to approve the EPQ with the amendments as discussed in today's meeting.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the EPQ with the suggested adjustments. And we have a second. Any further discussion? I will say that we will send out the final version to you regardless. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion carries. Okay. Next on the agenda is to review the enrollment projection data. Believe it or not, that's not the two pages that I gave you from NASDAQ that was stapled together. It's actually this portion, which all I really wanted to do is just give you a sense of what the MSBA is looking for from each of the towns. And I do have to give Michelle Blackburn, who's my assistant, I have to give her credit. She's been very diligent with town hall in both Dayton and in Rehoboth to get this information. And I just made a copy of a snapshot of what it is that they're looking for, but the process that MSBA goes through in terms of determining what they feel is the enrollment, that they're going to come back to us and say, we're willing to build it for 515, you want it for 520. You know, if you want to build it a little bigger, then we'll cut down your reimbursement. You know, again, that horse trading conversation. But this is how thorough they are from the standpoint of the number of births, the population, the number of building permits, housing sales, so on. And I realize that there are aspects of the town that, you know, based on the water moratorium and, you know, some other proposed projects, those are things that we're going to weave into the EPQ that might not necessarily fit into just these boxes that they're asking us for.
I may, on the third page of this document, projected permits to be issued. That address those projects that are on the building inspector's desk with potential building.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, yes.
Okay, no, because I going to page 2. I want to know, and again, I'm asking out of a position of ignorance in this process, but he asked for total number issued in the last 10 years. I think instead of putting a number down, say 200, I think in the submission, if allowed, might be more telling to put it down year by year, because I'm willing to bet that as opposed to being linear, you're going to see a curve that's ramping up. Okay, and if I look at it and I see one single number.
Oh, no, it does say for each of. So I think it is indicating that.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, I missed that, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Missed that.
And on page 3, the housing project description, you know, that is where I think we have a little bit of license to mention some of the things that could potentially manifest themselves if the moratorium on water gets lifted and, you know, different things like that. Mark, do you have a couple of minutes afterwards that you could meet with me, Lenny, and Caitlin, just to help us with the.
That's ideal.
Awesome, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Sometimes jumps out at me is the growth rates for 2024 seem just really out of
If you
step.
meant singular, it comes
You know?
before the yes.
Us young people, we're tired. We're trying to slow
COVID's
down.
over.
Yeah,
Goes back
COVID's
to work.
over.
I mean, I'm thinking. school had, even when
You're talking about,
we only had one.
you were talking about the births, is that what you were saying?
Yeah, it's,
On that
I mean,
the other one.
they're couched in the 70s and 80s and then it drops down to 46. It just sounds like something's missing.
Well, I think what we got from town hall, so. 2024 is not over yet, so
Yeah.
an opportunity to catch up. Those of you that are young enough to have children.
We're gonna add one. Yeah.
Congrats.
Yep.
We changed that to 34.
Thank you.
Is that number three?
Change that,
Another girl.
Add that in.
scratch that.
My part.
So,
You have one now?
the
Two.
last item on the agenda, is just milestone dates, and the milestone dates really are July 30th. Right now, EPQ is due July 30th. Michelle and I will continue to work on this portal of the births and the building permits, and Lenny and Mark are gonna give us some help in terms of the last page. But what I'll do is, when we meet in August, I'll get some information from the MSBA in terms of like the last date that we can possibly have a vote for feasibility, and then even some preliminary feasibility. So I'll have that for you when we meet. Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So we have a motion to adjourn and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
That's all. That's not.